After the disassembled parts have been inspected and corrected, they are to be reassembled into an engine unit. In reassembly, check each part carefully for foreign matter. Clean the rear side of each bearing to remove dust and grease. Using compressed air, remove foreign matter from each oil hole and bolt hole of the cylinder block. This video will show the specific reassembly procedures for 3 sections: the cylinder block, the cylinder head, and the timing belt. Let's begin with piston part assembly. Using 5 different SSTs and a press, join each piston and connecting rod. Be careful not to deform the piston. Align the front marks of the piston and connecting rod. Install bearings in the connecting rod and bearing cap. At this time, be sure to install the correct bearings matching the numbers. Install piston rings using a piston ring tool. Be careful to install the correct piston rings. At this time, ensure that the front mark of each piston comes at the front and that the piston ring end gaps are positioned as shown. Next, crankshaft parts will be installed. Aligning the oil holes, install the upper bearings with oil grooves on the cylinder block. Install the lower bearing in each bearing cap. Also, be sure to install the correct bearings matching the numbers. You can select the correct bearing this way. Add the numbers stamped on the cylinder block to the number on the crankshaft and select a bearing having the same number as the sum. In the present engine, for example, 2 is stamped on the cylinder block and 0 on the crankshaft for the number 2 main journal. 2 and 0 make 2. Therefore, the appropriate bearing number is 2. Correct bearings for other cylinders can be selected in the same way. Install the upper thrust washers on both sides of the number 3 journal of the cylinder block with the oil grooves facing outward. Lubricate the bearings in the cylinder block with engine oil and install the crankshaft. Then, install the flanged lower thrust washers on both sides of the journal of the number 3 crankshaft bearing cap with the oil grooves facing outward. Set the bearing caps in numerical order with the arrows facing the front. Apply a thin coat of engine oil to the threads and bearing surface of each bearing cap bolt and temporarily tighten the bolts little by little in several passes. Then tighten bolts to the specified torque, 610 kilograms per centimeter. After that, check that the crankshaft turns smoothly. Install the piston and connecting rod assemblies. First, lubricate each cylinder bore and piston with engine oil. Be sure to lubricate the crank pins as well. Using a piston ring compressor, push each piston and connecting rod assembly into the appropriate cylinder. Place a short vinyl tube on each connecting rod bolt to prevent damage to cylinder inside wall and crank pin. Install a bearing cap on each connecting rod with the front mark facing forward. Temporarily tighten the bearing cap nuts uniformly, little by little, in several passes. Confirm that the mated bearing cap and connecting rod have the same match mark, which was stamped in disassembly. Tighten the nuts to the specified torque of 500 kilograms per centimeter. Measure the connecting rod thrust clearance. Then check that the crankshaft turns smoothly. Now, let's look at the method of installing the cylinder head. Removed gaskets and oil seals must all be replaced with new ones. Prepare new gaskets and oil seals before beginning cylinder head installation. First, install the oil seal, valve, spring seat, valve spring, and valve spring retainer in the cylinder head. Using an SST, install the valve spring retainer lock. Lightly tap the valve stem top with a plastic-faced hammer to ensure a proper fit. Install the valve lifter and shim. Place the cylinder head gasket on the cylinder block in the correct orientation and on the correct side. Place the cylinder head in position on the cylinder block. At this time, do not slide the cylinder head on the cylinder block because the cylinder head's bottom face could be scratched by the knock pins. Lubricate the cylinder head bolt threads with engine oil and set the bolts in the bolt holes. Using an SST, tighten the bolts little by little in this sequence in several passes. The specified tightening torque is 610 kilograms per centimeter. For a 4AFE engine, the method called yield point fastening is used to tighten the cylinder head bolts. First, tighten the cylinder head bolts to the specified torque of 300 kilograms per centimeter using an SST. After tightening the bolts, mark each bolt head with paint at a point toward the cylinder head front as shown. Then turn the bolts 90 degrees and another 90 degrees in this sequence to retighten. Cylinder head bolt tightening is complete when the front mark on each bolt head has been turned 180 degrees from the original position. Next, install the exhaust camshaft on the cylinder head, taking care of the knock pin position. Apply seal packing to the number 1 bearing cap of the exhaust camshaft at the position shown, and install the bearing cap in the proper position on the cylinder head. Install the remaining camshaft bearing caps on the cylinder head and tighten the bolts to a torque of 130 kilograms per centimeter in this sequence. Apply MP grease to the entire lip circumference of a new oil seal. Using an SST, insert the oil seal as deeply as possible into the cylinder head. Rotate the exhaust camshaft so that the installation mark is positioned as shown. Install the intake camshaft according to the installation mark. Install the number 3 bearing cap. Carefully tighten the bearing cap bolts little by little in several passes. Install the remaining bearing caps in this sequence. The specified tightening torque is 130 kilograms per centimeter. Remove the service bolt that fixes the subgear and tighten the bolts of the number 1 bearing cap. This completes installation of the camshafts. The oil pan will now be installed. Apply seal packing to the oil pan continuously. for the bolt holes, apply it inside. Then, before the seal packing has dried, install the oil pan on the cylinder block. Now, let's look at the procedures for installing the timing belt. Install the camshaft timing pulley and crankshaft timing pulley. Temporarily install the idler pulley of the timing belt and install the tension spring. Position each timing pulley at the top dead center mark and set the number 1 cylinder at compression top dead center. Install the timing belt in the correct direction while checking the arrow mark put on the belt when it was disassembled. Loosen the idler pulley bolt and tighten the timing belt. Temporarily tighten the crankshaft pulley bolt. And turn the crankshaft 2 times in the forward direction. Tighten the idler pulley bolt. Then check the timing marks for alignment. If they're not aligned, remove the timing belt and reinstall it. Tighten the idler pulley bolt to the specified torque of 375 kilograms per centimeter. Install the timing belt guide and timing belt covers. Using SSTs, tighten the crankshaft pulley bolt while fixing the crankshaft pulley. The tightening torque is 1,200 kilograms per centimeter. You have now learned the procedures for installing the cylinder block, cylinder head, and timing belt. For further detail,